Hello, welcome to a residential energy code training. We're going to be looking at the UA trade-off tool. My name is Joey Starr. I'm a technical project manager at Southface, and today we have Mike Barsick here, who is going to walk us through how to use that UA trade-off tool.
Yeah, thanks, Joey, and welcome everybody. This is a tool that we already have another webinar that kind of explains how to do it. We thought we'd take an actual house at the end, and so there'll be some overlap between these two different videos, but I think just want to kind of start off by saying here is, from a big picture, the ways to show compliance with the energy code. You can meet the prescriptive energy code, and Georgia's code in the year 2020 and on is based on the 15 IECC with a few modifications. So it's not the verbatim 2015 prescriptive chart. And Joey, this one's pretty, has been around for a long time, the UA trade-off approach, and most people historically would do RESCHECK, but maybe not today. Why is that?
Yeah, so those amendments that you were talking about with Georgia are complicating things, and we understand that. So when you
Yeah.
try to use ResCheck, it's going to default to the 2015 IECC. So obviously, we've had quite a bit of questions surrounding that. So this is the reason why we're here today, is to kind of talk through this process just a little bit more in depth.
You got it. Thank you. And then also there are two other ways to do that involve an actual energy model, a true annual simulation. There's section 405, and then there's the ERI, which is a lot like the HERS index kind of thing. But we're going to focus on this one today, the UA trade-off. And by code, you can basically do it by hand, or you can use a free software tool called ResCheck. And we're going to focus on doing it by hand, but we're actually going to use some of the good feature, one of the nice features of ResCheck, which is that it will calculate a UA or a U factor for different assemblies for us. So we'll show you what we mean. We're going to sort of use parts of ResCheck, but not officially use it. We're going to take numbers we get from ResCheck and paste them into a spreadsheet. And Joey, speaking of spreadsheets, what's our I guess, assumed knowledge level of spreadsheets for this tool?
I would say you need to be pretty proficient with it with Excel to be able to use that. Again, the alternative is to do it just strictly by hand, but we find that Excel, once you kind of get it down, is going to be a lot easier.
And what we've made is a template for you that you can use that is really gonna, all you have to do is essentially put in the data, and maybe I'll show you what I mean when I say write a couple formulas. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Multiply this number times this number, essentially, and then you're good to go. So we'll show you what we mean. Wanted to take us to wrong one. Well, first of all, figure out what climate zone you're in, zone 2, 3, or 4. And also, everything in the red box here is what essentially changed from our previous code. And there's a lot of stuff, but Georgia made some amendments, and this is what we ended up with in our actual prescriptive code. So in other words, probably the biggest one is we were supposed to, if you're in climate zones 3 and 4, have R20 in the walls. And they say R20, it could mean R13 plus a continuous R5. That was supposed to be our default if we had not modified the 2015 code. But what we ended up with is basically this. This is the same information that Georgia ended up with. And the only thing that really changed of significance in climate zone 3 is the windows get better, and so does the solar heat gain and the ceiling R value. But these are basically the same double pane Lowy windows. And the ceiling went from R30 to 38. North Georgia was supposed to go to 49, but didn't. So again, what we arguably were supposed to have and what we ended up with. So it kind of depends on your climate zone. We went a little better on windows, but we went worse on walls. That's probably the short version on that. And everybody is familiar with this prescriptive R value table, and these kind of make sense. So for climate zone 3, R38 in the ceiling, R13 only in the walls. Knee walls are always add up to be R18 with a sealed attic air barrier. Mass walls actually did go up too, but you don't see a ton of those. and then the floor is R19. And if you do a basement, what you condition it by, or you, in other words, you insulate the walls, same for conditioned crawl space, it's either R5 continuous or R13 if you have a cavity, and no slab insulation. So there's also a lesser known sister to this table, which is the same information, but instead of presenting it as R values of components, it's U factors of the assembly. And it's gonna pop up here, I swear. There it is, okay. And so essentially what they're saying is an R38 ceiling is roughly the same as a 0.030 U factor ceiling, or an R13 wood frame wall assembly is roughly the same as a 0.084 frame wall U factor, and so on down the line. So this table is the one that we're effectively going to be using today. One more thing I wanted to mention before we go jump into the tool, and Joey, this is, I want you to tell everybody, what is this a picture of right here? What is that?
It looks like a backstop at a Little League field.
Exactly. So the backstop table is reminding us that no matter what kind of trade-offs we do, either using RESCHECK or a hand trade-off or the simulated and the energy modeling approaches, no matter what, our envelope can't be worse than this table. And Joey, this table is pretty much the same as it was under the old code, right? So it's kind of saying you can't build a house any worse today than under old code.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just want to remind people of that table. That's also part of the analysis we have to be aware of. All right, so having said that, you can download our free template, and I've got it up here in a second, right there. And it starts off, it's not terribly exciting. It starts off and it has some basic calculations, and it says this worksheet calculates the total envelope UA based on your inputs, and it provides a determination of your proposed compared to what meets code. And it's based on what happens in the IECC section 40215. So I just thought I'd, just for completeness, show everybody. No, I'm on the wrong part of the page here. This is the actual code itself, and this is where it says you can meet the prescriptive R value like you see from this table, or do a total UA alternative. And the total UA alternative is the one we're going to use. And it says if you're going to do that, you want to use the less exciting version of the same prescriptive code. So again, the only thing, we're using a method that's essentially a method that is essentially mentioned in the code and given as an option in the code. The only thing that we've changed are some of the prescriptive U factors. Okay, so having shown that, it also says when you get all done, it's going to add it up. And what you want to do is not let your UA exceed the code-based one. It can be equal to or lower and you pass. And if it's worse, you'll get something in red that says you fail. A couple checks. You want to make sure you correctly enter in the net wall and ceiling areas. This is, can you explain how that's different, Joey, from RESCHECK?
Actually, I don't know that I can because I haven't
sorry.
used RESCHECK that much.
I'm sorry. What I meant was, and if you've used RESCHECK a lot, which it's fine, then you always enter the gross area, and it automatically subtracts out the windows and doors. This tool is not quite that sophisticated, so you enter the net wall area, which is the gross minus the windows and doors. So sorry for that. And then you want to make sure that you obviously enter all surfaces that make up the envelope. So there's going to be a foundation and some walls and a ceiling, and then there's windows and doors that you will subtract out to get the net area. So that kind of thing. You want to make sure that you get the correct U factors from RESCHECK. We're going to show that. You're going to use RESCHECK to give you some very important numbers and paste them into the spreadsheet. And then you're going to also paste in the prescriptive values from the Georgia code, and those are listed right here on this tab, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then you have to do a separate check on the solar heat gain coefficient. This is an additional thing you have to prove, that the weighted average solar heat gain does not exceed 0.27, and I'll show you that. And then you want to also just make sure that you're not violating the backstop table. And so the backstop table is also on this orange tab right here. So we'll show you that in a second. So most of the work is going to get done on this sheet right here. And this sheet gives you the ability to enter some walls and give it the areas, tell it the R values and insulation, but most importantly, get the U factor from RESCHECK. And also get the prescriptive code. We'll show you where that is. And we'll do the same thing for all the walls. We'll do the same thing for the different kinds of foundations, and we'll do ceilings as well. And then enter information. It says windows, but it's really windows and doors down in here. And the only other thing I want to mention is the tool you use to show compliance with your solar heat gain coefficient, which is you're going to get that information from a weighted average calculator. And this is the simple way to do it. So, just for example, if I have a bunch of windows that are 0.5, let's actually ignore U factor. Let's just say I have a bunch of windows that are 0.25 on solar heat gain. And those make up 300 square feet, just hypothetically. And there's one of those windows. Obviously, you could do 30 square foot windows. You could say there's 10 of them, but it's the same math, so it doesn't matter. And let's say I've got a couple windows that are worse, that they're 0.30. And I've only got, I don't know, one of those, 20 square feet. And so when I hit that, maybe I need to pick a harder example here. Let's make it 40 of those. There you go. I was trying to make something show up. So now we have a total of 340 square feet of glass, and the weighted average of all the glass is 0.26. Most of it's less than code, some of it's worse than code, and the weighted average is 0.26. So if you can fill those numbers in, you'll end up putting that over here on your at the bottom, and your code-based one, I'm sorry, I erased that by accident, is 0.27. Your code-based one is 0.27. The one that you would enter in this example would be 0.26, just to show you how that works. All right, so I've got a made-up house that I left in here just because I figured it's good to look at an example. So I put in 3 different kinds of walls with different types of R values and different types of areas. I put in, looks like, I don't know why that has a formatted like that, but I put in 4 different types of foundations. I've got a floor over garage, I've got a slab on grade, and slab on grade, you don't enter area, you enter the linear feet around the perimeter. I've got a crawl space wall and I got a basement wall. I've got a flat ceiling, I've got a vaulted spray foam, and I got a vaulted that has got, let's say, R25 in the category, in the cavity. And then I've got different kinds of windows. So without beating this, with a stick here too much longer, here's what it looks like. I'm going to scroll up to the top and say, I entered this information. My address is 123 Fake Street. Does that sound real? It's my example house problem. I entered the wall area, I entered the first wall type, which is an 8-inch CMU. I just typed that in, and the area is 500 square feet. And I'm going to delete something here so we show how to do this, because normally these columns are blank. Let me just show how to do it real quick. And I've left them filled in for this example because this is the one that you'll get from the when you download the template. This is the example numbers. But when you use the real tab, this is it. Everything is blank, so you're going to have to create these formulas over here. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, so basically you type in what you've got and how much area it is, and you can tell it about the insulation. And then I've also got the 16-inch on center wood frame wall, and it's R13 in the cavity. And I've got the 24-inch on center, and it's 600 square feet. It's got some continuous R3. So what happens is for each one of these, you have to get the prescriptive code U factor. And so, for example, this is a mass wall. So I'm going to go over here and look in the blue, and it shows a mass wall, and it says for climate zone 3, 0.098. And so I come over here and I type in 0.098. That's what I typed in. And then over here for wood frame walls, all wood frame walls is 0.084. So I come over here. Whoops, I hit the wrong one. I come over here and I type in 0.084. And that is also a wood frame wall, 0.084. What you don't typically have, or you're going to have to get, are these values. Okay? So these values come from RESCHECK. So RESCHECK, Joey, where do you get RESCHECK?
Energycodes.gov.
Yep, and I probably meant to show the link to that, but I didn't. Energycodes.gov is the website where you can download that. I think it's on the instructions as well, right there, energycodes.gov. So in this example, I'm going to go to RESCHECK and I'm going to make an 8-inch CMU wall, and I'm going to hit. So I've got it here. It's a little bit small. You may have to take my word for it. I'm going to make a masonry block wall with empty cells, no insulation, and I'm just going to say it's 1 square foot just to make it do the math. And then I'm going to say, well, what if I want to put some continuous insulation on it? Exterior, I'd say exterior insulation, and I'm going to put none in the cavity, and I'm going to put an R, what did I say on that? 8, I think is what. Yep. Yes, yeah. And so that gives me a 0.089 U factor. And I realize not a lot of people build block wall houses, but that's what I'm going to show. And there's no cavity insulation. So the main thing is I'm going to type in the 0.089 because that's what matters. None of this is just nice to look at, but this is what really does the math. And then also, I don't know if you saw it, but I had an exterior wall in here with no continuous insulation. So I'll make that a 0. And it's a wood frame wall, and it's R16, excuse me, it's 16-inch on center. And it's R13 in the cavity. So that gives me an 0.082 U factor. 0.082. And then I've also got this one, which is the same wall, except it also has continuous insulation. And so I come over here and I'm going to make this wall, I'll just delete this wall. Hold on a second. Not to confuse us, but I'll make another wall and I'll say this is wood frame wall, 16-inch on center. I'll just make it 1 square foot. The cavity on this is 13. And the continuous, I think, is R, what did we say?
3, I believe.
I think we said 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. So 0.064 is my U factor. So I use that information from RESCHECK to fill this in, 0.064. Boom. And then I'll do something similar for the floor over the garage. So for example, the floor over the garage is, I'll just make a floor and I say floor, all wood, it's over unconditioned space, right? You can make square footage, whatever. The R value is 19 and it gives me a 047. So I come over here, I type in 047. Likewise, I have to, I'm going to assume you can handle the rest of this. I'll do slab because it's a little different. So let me do the slab. So going over to RESCHECK, I'm going to make a floor and it says slab on grade, unheated. What does unheated mean, Joey?
There's no radiant piping in the slab.
Right. That's mostly what we would see here in the South.
Right.
So, and it asks for the perimeter, and it doesn't want to know the first floor area. It wants to know the exposed edge of the perimeter. So for here, I'm just going to type in 1 because all I want is the U factor. And the R value, I'm going to leave it 0 because you don't have to insulate it. But you'll notice that the U factor is 1.042. So I'll take that over here and I'll type in 1.042. And then the 180 is the actual perimeter that we said that's what we got for this is 180 feet for this made up problem. Same kind of concept for the basement wall and the crawl space wall. It wants to know information about how below grade it is. It'll pop up with a little diagram. But anyway, the goal for you is to get the U factor based on how much insulation you're proposing. So my crawl space wall is R5. My basement wall is R11. I just did one of those blanket wraps. It's continuous and it's continuous. But the main thing that matters is I get these values from RESCHECK. So moving on, we'll do one more. We'll just show what happens when we do, for example, a roof line. So I'm going to do R38 and I'll put ceiling, and it's a flat ceiling. So I'll put 1 square foot again, and it's going to have R38 in the cavity. And it gives me a 0.030 U factor, so I'll grab that, put it over there. Likewise, I could do a vault. I'll do another ceiling. This one is a vaulted, or they call it a cathedral ceiling. Well, I'll give it 1 square foot. This one has, let's say, R25 in the cavity. That's a 0.041, so I'll paste that in here. So I know this is terribly exciting. After you've filled in all the information, the windows are easy because this is what the U factors were. You know, there's a bunch of different kinds of windows with different U factors and some glass solid doors. So all I have to do is enter those in. And by code, 0.35 is what you're being compared against. So for all windows, or excuse me, all fenestration, which is windows and doors, the answer is 0.35 in the state of Georgia. For all ceilings in the entire state of Georgia, the answer is 0.030. And again, if you don't remember that, it comes from this table. Where's the word 0.030? Right there. So all that is 0.030. And finally, for the different kinds of walls, there's the wood frame wall, there's the mass wall. So filling in the blue part, oops, I mistakenly went to RESCHECK. Filling in the blue part is pretty easy. You just get these values from the code table. And just remember that slab-on grades are not required to be insulated, but there's the U factor that you'll use, and you'll see what that does. So basically, all the different kinds of foundations, like for example, here's a floor U factor in climate zone 3, it's 0.047. Here's a basement wall U factor 0.091, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, once you've entered all this information, now all you have to do is make up the formulas. And the formulas are not as complicated as I'm making it sound. So for example, there's 2 columns here. One is kind of yellow and the other is kind of blue. All you're doing is you're multiplying to get the UA. So I'm going to say, okay, I want the proposed U value, which is the 0.089, times the area, and the area is 500 in this example. So it's cell G8 times cell D8. Ta-da! And then over here for this one, it's the proposed U factor, which is the default of the code, times the same area. And then once you've done those two, for all the ceilings, you can copy and paste at the same time. So I'm going to hit copy, and this is a trick within Excel, and then paste. If you don't know how to do this, you can just type them in one by one. You can say equals this area times this U factor and hit enter, and it's the same value. So that's the beautiful thing about Excel is you can copy and paste formulas. Okay, so anyway, that's got us the contribution for the house and the contribution for the version of the house that exactly meets code. So let's do the same thing down here for foundations. So for these foundations, I'm going to say the U factor of what we propose times the area of what we propose. And I'm going to say compare that to the U factor of the version that meets code times the area, same area. Joey, make sure I'm not making any stupid mistakes here.
Yeah, I'm trying. Everything seems good to me so far.
I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste those for the next two types of foundation, and the work is done. The slab is a little different because
Mm-hmm.
the slab is the U factor times the perimeter, not times the square footage. So it's a little different. So you just say, okay, that U factor times that area, that perimeter. And over here, I'm going to do the same thing and just say that U factor times the perimeter. And Joey, what is it going to be? What does it mean when they have the same value here? You know, they're
It means it exactly meets code.
exactly. So if your UA is identical, then then you're basically right at code. If your UA is better, like this one, the contribution is lower than what it would be. So we're beating code on this one, and we're worse than code on this one a little bit, and we're at code on this one. And again, it's the whole house at the very end that matters. But okay, let's drive on. Let's do the ceilings. Ceilings, the equations we have to do are pretty easy. It's this U factor times the area, which is 1,000. And it's likewise, it's the code reference U factor times the area, which is 1,000. Okay. And now all we have to do is copy and paste, copy those down and paste those in. And now we're done with those. And the last thing we have to do for this part is we need to do the U factor and area times of the windows. So this is the same concept. We're going to take the U factor of the actual window, that one, times the area. And over here, the U factor of the code version times the same area. And now I'm going to copy, paste all those down. And you'll notice I've entered the opaque doors, the glass door, all the different kinds of windows. They have different areas. They have different U factors. They also have solar heat gain coefficient, which is going to be handled over on this page. So this page has that same information. All the stuff with glass on it is over here. And I can honestly just delete these. It doesn't even matter, because all I'm using this for is to show that, okay, these windows are 100 square feet and they're right at code. These 50 are worse than code. These 20 square feet, that's 15 square feet, and these are better than code. The weighted average, 0.27. That's all I need from that. And now I can come over here and type that in there. And as long as these two line up, we can sort of proceed. So how'd we do? Well, let's check it out. We're going to scroll down and we're going to see that everything in the light yellow column adds up to be 736. Everything in the blue column adds up to be 748. We are beating code by 1.5%. How do you feel, Joey?
Yay, we did it.
So we took an example where some of the components are better than code, some of the components are right at code, some of the components are worse than code. But in aggregate, this house passes code, providing we can check we're good on all the checks. And again, the only check left, I think, that we haven't done, we've checked, we've got the right res check, and we got the right net areas. We checked on solar heat gain. The only thing we have to check is the can't trade to zero, which I'm pretty confident we didn't have anything that's worse than any value on this table right here, or it's the same table right here. I just literally pasted it in so you can have the footnotes. But anyway, we should be good to go. So all we have to do at this point, is print this out. And I've actually already done that. I printed it to a PDF, and that's what it looks like. So try to fit this to my screen. But anyway, you can just sign this and show this to the code official, and you're absolutely accurately meeting code. You're not you're following a compliance pathway. You're just doing it by hand instead of RESCHECK. And this is the printout that you get. I recommend that you print it to one page. That's the best way to make it print out. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so go to this, go to File, print, select your printer. It can be a paper printer. Mine is a PDF writer as your printer. You can select a real printer or a PDF writer. And I recommend you turn it into landscape orientation. And down here, I'm going to say it's going to, by default, probably come up as no scaling, but I'll try to make sure it comes up. By default, you want to print to one sheet, fit on one sheet, and then it'll look like that. And then if you want to, you can mess with the margins if you want to. I've got it on narrow margins, so you can still kind of maximize it. But that's basically it. And when it prints, it looks just like that. Joey, any thoughts or comments or questions before we do a real house?
No, it's like you said though, this should basically suffice for code compliance. As all code matters go, it's always up to the local jurisdiction, but we often have jurisdictions calling us with questions about this, so I know that they're using it as well, so you shouldn't have any problems with that.
Yeah, this is, I'm not saying it's pretty, but it is a way of doing a trade-off by hand. And now
it's prettier than, if we had to scribble it with pencils.
Yeah, oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, definitely easier. And we're using sort of one of the virtues of ResCheck, which is a really nice feature in that it gives us that, I think it's this one, slide 115. Yeah, ResCheck will give us the values that we need. And here's the website to get it from.
And that's another thing too, is it's important to do this through ResCheck because if you just did the math and basically inverted the R value to get the U factor, it doesn't have framing factors and other things like that built in. So you really have to use ResCheck because I believe the code says it has to be compliant with the ASHRAE Fundamentals Handbook. So our tool is not necessarily that, but ResCheck certainly is.
Yeah, and here I just clicked on it live. So can you see this? I don't know what's going to happen, but can you see this?
Yeah,
so it's coming up to the website, and you click on ResCheck. And I was using the version that you can download on your desktop, but honestly, the web-based version is sometimes even easier. So you can, and again, all I'm using it for is to get the U factors of assemblies. So it's asking me, do I want to? I'm just going to say start a new project over here. Just doesn't really matter. Jump into envelope and you'll see. So for example, let's do a ceiling, and I'm going to say it's a flat ceiling with, for here, not to confuse anybody, I'm just going to put in 1. And then the cavity R value down here is, let's say 38, and no continuous R value. And I say apply, and it tells me, where does it tell me the U factor? It's in here, I know it is. There it is, right there. The U factor is 0.030. And likewise, you can do the same thing for, under foundations. Let's add a basement wall. So I'm gonna do a solid concrete basement wall. And it's got this nice diagram down here to help you kind of figure out what information they want. I want to know the area. I'm just going to put in 1 square foot so we don't get confused. The cavity R value, now I probably won't have any. Continuous R value, yeah, okay. By code, it's R5 in Georgia, but it kind of depends on how tall is your wall. So let's say it's a 9-foot basement wall and it's 8 foot below grade. Those will affect the actual outcome. And how far does your insulation go down? I'm going to say it goes down all 9 feet. So I'll say, okay, and hit apply. And there's my basement wall. And then when I blow it up here, you can say, can you see this, Joey?
Yep.
That it's giving me try to zoom in a little bit. That's one nice thing about the web version, I can zoom. It says an 086. So that would be the value that you would then go in and paste into your tool here that we've been using. That's the printout of the tool. So let me hide that. But anyway, so that's how you use ResCheck. And let's go back to our presentation. And what I want to do now is do the actual house. And this is a house that I have some plans. I have the floor plans on. It starts here, and I call it the ACME house. Okay, so we're going to see a giant anvil and a roadrunner come by, coyote. But Joey, I would say this is not an atypical home that you might find being built in Atlanta. It's got a first floor, it's got a 2-story house with an attached garage. Part of the second floor extends over the garage. So part of your thermal envelope is essentially a floor over a garage, but most of your foundation is just a slab on grade, okay? And first floor is a little over 1,300. Second floor is almost 1,500. So the total house is about 2,800 square feet, and you can see that. And here's my basic takeoff information, okay? So the total floor area is 2,816. You don't need the volume, but I'm just going to show you that's the volume. And the main thing we do need is, and I've tried to put in bold what we're going to enter into our tool here. So 167 feet of perimeter, and also 280 square feet of floor over a garage. Okay, and there's the R values that we'll be using. The gross area of this, I had these numbers on my plans, was 2,578. So I had to manually subtract the windows and all the glass doors. So that's the leftover number, 2,178 square feet. And this particular house also had a different type of assembly wall adjacent to the garage, which was the same R13, and it had a door in it. So that's why its net wall is this number, 237 instead of 257. This house had some attic knee walls, and in my default, I built them with R13 plus an R5 continuous, or you could do an R19 in the cavity. 420 square feet. The windows, to simplify it, I'm going to say there's really only one type of window. It's the same window, glass performance-wise. So here it is on the front, left, back, and right, and the total area is 368 square feet, and that is the window I'm using. Pretty typical window. Better on U factor, a little better on solar heat gain than prescriptive. There's a glass door, however, that's a little bit worse on U factor and a little bit worse on solar heat gain. And there is a front door that is wood, so it's a little bit worse on code, but the metal door, foam core door to the garage is slightly better, and it's 20 square feet. And the last takeoff is this house. The second floor had about 1,220 square feet of flat ceiling. I'm going to say it's R38, and it also had some vaulted ceiling that I'm going to say is only R25. So Joey, that's my takeoff content, along with either the R value or the U factor. Any comments or thoughts? So now that we have the hard part done, getting this is the hard part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing the takeoffs.
Yeah.
The time-consuming part. But you know, we'll show you why it might be worth it. So I'm going to escape out of here, and let's go back to that. That was I'm on the wrong one. Sorry. I want to go back to this one. That's it right there. So I'm going to go over to my my trade-off tool, and I'm going to say, if you're willing to believe me, that I entered all the information in, and I call it the Acme house with a flat ceiling. And the address is 123 Cactus Lane. And so I entered the main wall area. Can you see this, Joey? Is it zoomed in enough, or do I need to zoom in at all?
No, it looks good.
You can see it? Okay, cool. So the main wall area is that 2,170 square feet. It's 13 in the cavity. And I went to RESCHECK and I looked it up, and it was 0.082. And I went to this code over here, and I scrolled up, and it says a wood frame wall is 0.084. So yep, everything looks good. The garage wall, I realized for this, I could have lumped it in with the other one, but there's a reason I might do it differently, and we'll show you that later. So I kept it as a separate entry, but you know, you could lump them together in this example, 082, 084, and the attic knee wall I called out separately because I want to get credit for it meeting code, and actually, you know, it's going to help me because it's a 0.057 versus a 084. So I'm a little better on that one. Slab on grade, that's the only foundation I've got. I don't have any walls, foundation walls. So enter that in, 167. There is the U factor I got from RESCHECK, and there's the U factor from the table. Same. And then down here for ceiling, I entered the flat ceiling in as 1220, R38, and that had a U factor of 030. There's the code. all the ceilings are 030 U factor. That's the default. So my vaulted ceiling here is worse than code. So I've got some parts of my house so far that are better and some parts that are worse. And then I come down to the windows. There's really most of the windows, 0.31, so that's better than code. The glass door is worse, and there's my solar heat gain, 0.26 and 0.30. So when I jump over to my weighted average calculator, 0.26, 360, 0.30, 20, you can see that basically the weighted average still rounds down to 0.26. So I'm good on that front. Oops, wrong one, sorry. I'll go to this tab. And I'll scroll down. I can put 0.26 right here. That's what we'll say I type that in. And then the door, the front door, there's a wood door that's a little bit worse. There's a metal foam core door that's slightly better. There's the different U factors for those. Here's the math when it all adds up. You can see the metal foam core door is a little bit better than the code-based door. The front wood, the front wood door is a little bit worse. If I can scroll back to where I was. And the glass door is a little bit worse, but the windows are a little bit better. So again, Joey, when I add all this up, dun, 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 let's see how we did. What does that tell you?
Just a little bit better than code.
Yeah, by about 3.7% better than code. And again, some things are better than code, some things are worse than code. Somebody gave me this is an analogy. Think of it as playing golf, and you in this example, you birdied the main windows, but you bogeyed the glass door and the front door, but you also birdied the door to the garage. And at the end of the day, when you look at all your birdies and all your bogeys and you add them all up, as long as you're no worse than, as long as you hit par or better, you win. And so that's basically what we've done. So that was that house as the builder had originally intended to make it. And I thought we should show a pretty common upgrade or change and see if we can make it pass. So for this, I'm going to go back to my presentation really quick. So just real quick, this is what the house was that we just entered, and it passed by about 3.7%. This is what I'm proposing as a change, is that we foam the roof line. And when you foam the roof line, you have more surface area. So we did have 1,200 square feet plus 390 square feet of vault. You'll notice we have more essentially roof line surface area. So you would expect that number goes up, as does the R value of 20 is not as good, as the R value of 38. So, we're kind of making it weaker on that. We also have, if you look at this house, there's some gables. So we've got a couple places where we've got some gable assemblies, and those gables are usually probably spray foamed as well, because we're going to foam the whole attic, including the gable ends. So that's about, for that house, that was 744 square feet. And those are right at code at R13. And just for what it's worth, you can see that the volume did increase because we went from what it was to, now it's all including the what used to be the attic. Volume has no impact on our calculations. I just thought I'd show that. So now that we have the two things that changed, we also got rid of the knee walls. The knee walls are no longer there because we're foaming the roof line. And so we've kind of replaced them with the foam gable walls. So with that, if you can help me remember these numbers, I'm going to go and make a change. And to do that, I'm going to go to the spreadsheet that I have already created, which is the ACME with the flat ceiling. And I think what I'm going to do, let's go up to the top here on that one, is I'm going to go to Save As. I'm going to give it a different name. So I'm going to go to Save As, and I'm going to call it, instead of ACME flat ceiling, I'm going to call it ACME foamed attic. Okay, and hit OK. And that's just a way of starting a brand new file. So that's how you save as. Hopefully everybody understands that. And what's great about this is I've done a lot of work already. I don't have to mess with the walls. I don't have to mess with the foundation. I take that back. I do have to mess with the walls. The attic knee wall goes away. So I'm going to change that to foamed gable. And the area was, I think it was 744.
Hey,
Let's
Mike.
check. Yep. Yes.
I think your internet is acting a little squirrely. So,
How far back do I need to go?
no, I think we got most of it. It was just a little garbled. So yeah, what we're doing here is removing the knee walls because they don't exist in this house anymore, but we're replacing them with those foamed gables. And obviously we need to change the R values just a little bit as well.
Right. Thank you, and a good recap. And because this is just an R13, I happen to know it's the same as this one. So
Yeah.
I don't have to make a change on that. It will recalculate. And notice that whatever I put over here, 6 or something, it's not going to make any change until I actually go to RESCHECK and look it up.
Yeah.
So I happen to know that one, what that is. So I'm good on that one. And then coming down here, I'm going to, so I've made that one change. So I'm going to hit save on that. So I'm halfway there. I also need to essentially get rid of the flat ceiling and only have all cathedral ceiling. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to, and there's several ways we can do this. I'm just going to delete this row entirely, wipe it out. I'm going to change it to vaulted foam. I'll just say that. And the area is 1986. The area went up. And the R value is 20. And I need to recalculate this U factor. That doesn't make sense yet. So I got to go over here to RESCHECK. I'll just pull this one up. This is the one you can't see very well. But I'm going to do a new ceiling, or just modify one that's there. I'm going to say cathedral, put 1 square foot as the area, and I'm going to say it's R20 in the cavity, and it tells me, I don't know if you can see it, Joey, but that's a 0.05 U factor. So that is my contribution, is 0.05. Okay, and now everything else, the windows are all the same. So we've made our 2 wall and assembly changes. And now let's scroll down, and the math has been done over here. Let's see how we did. Dun, dun, dun. Uh-oh. What does that tell you, Joey?
So we went from about 3% better than code to now about 3% worse than code.
Okay. So we're going to need to trade something off, right?
Yeah.
And you can see that our actual UA is around 671. We need to get it down to about 648, and then we pass code. So now this is where you have to play what if scenarios. You can try different things. For example, you could try making the windows. Let's just say I'm going to go for a better quality window. I'm going to end up with a 0.29 U factor. And you'll notice that dropped me about 1%. So you can play around with the windows. I don't want to do it with windows, but I just thought I'd show that, And this is where you have to play with it. What if I could get a little bit more R value in the foamed roof line? Probably not, but maybe you could. Joey, what would you typically recommend we go after?
I think that adding continuous insulation to the exterior walls is probably going to be the easiest way.
Okay, so here we have the main exterior walls, not the wall to the garage and not the spray foam gable walls. We're just going to add a continuous R3. And you'll notice when I hit that right there, nothing happens because nothing happened over here. So I got to fix that cell value. So I'm just going to delete it at the moment. I'm going to go over to RESCHECK. And it turns out I actually have already done this one. So you know what I might do, Joey, is just to be different, I might make it an R4 just for kicks. So our R4 is a 0.060 U factor. And if I type in 0.060, then I need to change, it's just for completeness, change that to R4. And let's see what that did to us. So that helped us. That lowered the contribution of that wall. And now we are sitting pretty.
Back to where we started.
So maybe I should have done R2. Let's try R2. Um,
R2.
R2D2, yeah. So you get the idea here. You can't get credit for the OSB. The OSB sheathing is already in. That's an 069. That might still pass. I don't know. 0.069. And let's see. Yeah, it's got us passing by about 1%.
Yeah.
So, that could be the white foam board could get you there or something.
About a
So,
half inch of it or so, right?
or yeah, a half inch of the white foam board is an R2. That could get you there. So again, you can play what else. What's one more update you might or a thing you might try, Joey?
It might require more work and a lot of changes in the plans, but you could go to a 2x6 exterior stud wall.
Oh, and we could get, yeah, that's a good idea. So to do that, the area is the same, but we'd probably be able to get an R19 in the cavity, right? And I'm going to say 0 here for that. Oh, or sorry, delete, and just delete. So there's no continuous. And again, it doesn't mean anything until I fix it or put the right value in. So I'm going to go to ResCheck, and let's make a wall. Let's make this one be a wood frame wall, 16-inch on center, sure, 1 square foot. The cavity insulation is 19, and I'm going to get an 060 U factor.
Yeah.
So here, if I type in 0.060, that should pass, right?
Yep.
Yep, by about 4%. So there you have it. That's the basics. And of course, don't forget, we always want to do our little, make sure we're good on solar heat gain, which we are, and then make sure we're good on our backstop table, which I don't think we've done anything that violates these. These numbers are just saying you can't do something, a component can't be worse than this. If you've got a flat ceiling, you've got attic space, you're R38, but you can't trade it less than R30. That's, kind of the backstop thing we're talking about. So, Joey, what else do we want to say on this?
Well, speaking of the backstops too, I think it's worth mentioning that you can do an entire roof line with foam at an R20 in Georgia. The energy code as written has some stipulations that you can't do more than 20% in the prescriptive. So keep that in mind.
That's a really good point. Let's review that. That's a really good, whoops, let me get to my table. It's the same values up here, but it's also right here. And if you can read this, it says, no matter what, a framed wood frame wall has to be at least R13 in the cavity. You can't put R11 in the cavity. Mass wall anywhere is R5 in North Georgia. It would be R5. Knee walls, we talked about those. Floors, instead of 19, you could trade it to 13. Ceilings, you could trade it to 30. But if you're going to use an air impermeable that's spray foam, you can't go lower than R20 in the roof line. So that's kind of the lowest you can trade something down to. And that's the worst value that you can essentially put into ResCheck. So it will generate, these values for what you're trying to put in. So essentially an 050 is as bad as you can get on that. And you got to make up, that's about 99 and that's about 59. So you got to make up that 40 UA on other components, but that's as bad as you can go. You can't make that be, worse than that. So, and then Joey, the last thing I was going to say was, again, remind everybody, you want to print that out, go over here, tell it to print. It looks like I've already set it up to fit on one page. And then you can, if you want to mess with you can do normal margins, or if you do narrow, it just makes them a little bit bigger. There's a preview of it. And then when you print this, I think I may have already done it. Let's see. No, I haven't done it. So let's print it. And hopefully this will work. I'll save it as foamed attic. Yep, that's good. And there you have it. Give it just a second, it'll pop up. And let's make it fit onto the page. And there it is, the ACME house. And this shows a spray foamed roof line. It shows all our solar heat gain components are good. And with the addition of, in this case, I think we did the R19 2x6 walls. I maybe should have put 2x6, but anyway. This is passing code, and here's my documentation of how it works. Ta-da!
Ta-da.
All right. Well, with that, thank you for joining us. I hope that was helpful. And Joey, I think you're going to stop the broadcast, so I don't need to do that. So, all right. Thanks again for joining us.
All right, thank you.